Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm really excited because I have a good friend of mine, Olof Dallner, with us today, he said he's not going to geek out, but I want him to geek out. He is so smart and so brilliant. And I'll let you guys know kind of at the end how we've connected, because I think you're going to be really interested in an opportunity we have for you. But just for starters, Olof, please introduce yourself, share who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited about this. So my name is Olof Dallner. I'm originally from Sweden, and sort of what my profession is, I'm a geneticist. I originally started out studying molecular biology. I have a PhD in physiology, and then came to the US to do more genetics research. So that is what I do as profession. Also on the side, of course, people know me as a coach. I've done a lot of triathlons myself and other ultras, and I do coach a lot of triathlons now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that, so how we know each other from Tim, and Tim's told me all these different races and things that you've done. Give us how often do you race, and what's probably the craziest race you've ever done?
I try to focus on a few races every year. It's fun to have some goals. If you have some goals, all the training is easier. It's a cliche, but it's always about the road there. Racing is kind of the icing on top. And if you're going to talk about what's the craziest, that's pretty subjective. But I've done these challenges that are the sort of GoRuck selections that are 48-hour events where they basically try to make you quit 2-3 days. I've done a quintuple Ironman, which is a 5 times Ironman distance. You swim 12 miles, you bike 560 miles, and run 131 miles.
How many days did that take you?
It took me just under 4 days. It's 95 hours. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So people think it's very crazy. I think it's fun.
Amazing. Amazing. So, I did kind of put up some questions before that I was going to ask you. This is kind of the later ones, but since we're already on the topic, what about those races? What would you say are some pretty big life lessons that you've got from training from them, doing them? What are some big takeaways that you've learned that you can now apply to your life?
There are many. I think, and I talk about I'll talk a lot about this as a coach, actually. Life is sort of an ultra long race. I think people who do a lot of these kind of races know that, you have to learn how to divide things up. You can't start something very, very long and think about the finish, think about the end. It's really about dividing it all into tiny pieces where I'm just going to think about this next mile. What is it I need this mile? I need hydration. Maybe I need some nutrition. How do I feel? And so, what's my pace going to be? So breaking up into small parts and just repeating that over and over and over makes it much more doable. So that's a tactic you use to keep yourself going, basically. Yeah. Because sometimes when it feels very hard, you feel I can possibly not go any further. Then break it down to tiny, tiny pieces and go, this next half mile, maybe I just need to drink a little bit more water, or maybe I just need to eat some more nutrition, or, and many times when you do that, you kind of pick yourself up again. So, and the other thing, for example, when you do a long race, something is always going to go wrong. There's so much time out there, and you have to learn how to sort of compartmentalize that. In that moment, if something goes wrong, you fix it, and then you kind of put that away. You kind of lock that away in a little box somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
After the race, you can bring that back up again to think about what happened. But you can really be your own worst enemy if you let that impact you during the race. And especially the dividing things into smaller pieces is something I feel like I use like in my regular life, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed. You're like, this is the amount of things I have to do. Like, how am I possibly going to fit all this in? And so it's so overwhelming that you almost don't do anything. And I find it works better for me, and it's important for me to divide it into small pieces. And once I start doing one piece, I feel pretty good about that. A little celebration. I do the next small piece. I feel pretty good about that. Next celebration. And then suddenly you sort of work yourself through it.
Yeah, that is so helpful. Thank you for sharing that. I think I still think what you've done is crazy. Because like you said, it's like a perspective. Like, I don't care how strong of a lesson I want in life. I'm never running for 4 days straight. I'm not sleeping out in the woods. I'm not.
I guess, it's not for everyone, I guess. But, I also talk about this, like, it's not for everyone. It's not like you have to do these things. But when people go like, it's impossible for me to do it, I'm just like, no.
Right. That's a really good point.
I don't believe that. I believe that anyone can do it. The question is if you want it enough for, something that fits in your life. But
that's a really, really good, really, really good point. It's like, first, before you can do anything, you have to believe that you can do it, and you have to want to do it. And then you figure out the how, but you break it up into small steps. I think that's like a great, great takeaway that a lot of people can take from that. Yeah. For sure. And you mentioned on it, and I think this is a great way to start. So just to let everybody know, so Olof and I have met because we are both on a same team. We just started a nutrition program together. It's called DM Life, where our friend Tim and his wife had created this program. It's called, they have these quests that you go on, and they wanted to do a nutrition quest to help people establish healthier habits and behaviors. But they know, basically Tim isn't a dietitian, and he's also not, a personal trainer or anything. So they wanted to bring on some experts. So he asked myself and Olof to be a part of the team. And we're really excited that this is fully launched. And I'll tell you more about it at the end. But basically each module and kind of quest is a different topic. And the first thing we recorded together was all about hydration. And it was really awesome to like talk with someone who has this extensive knowledge about nutrition and our bodies, and how, as much as we both have like a ton of knowledge, we both agreed that like I overhydrate and you underhydrate. And it was just so great to like talk about like why and how that is. So because before you became a geneticist, you have your PhD in physiology, correct? And you would teach at colleges about physics and how, hydration and water would affect the body. So can you talk a little bit more to kind of like hydration and why it's important, I guess, but like kind of beyond like what my listeners already know, which I've talked to them about, is like it helps you have energy and it's calorie free and it keeps you without a headache and stuff like that.
I think, I think the little bit of the basis why we came into this talking about the hydration is that I think through the years now, what has happened is like, it's been sort of very popular to just drink a lot of pure water. It's something that's come into our culture now. People go to a lot of classes and just like really just drink a lot of pure water. And at the same time, salt has become sort of a criminal. And I like to make the point that salt is incredibly important to humans, and it's a nutrient, it's an electrolyte that we must have. Humans depend on it. So I think it's like been overemphasized a little bit how bad salt can be and how good it is to always drink pure water. So that's kind of how we start this discussion. Now, so the thing to remember is we have a salt concentration in our body, in our blood, that is like in a very narrow range. It's measured it's called milliequivalents per liter, but it's between 135 and 145. It's kept within that small range. And if you would drop under 135, that means that you're low in salt, and that has very bad consequences very quick. So, and because of how our kidney works, which is where, we filter our blood. It cannot keep all the salts in at all times. We sweat. We lose salt that way, which means that, we always need a little bit of salt because we're always losing a little bit of salt. And the concentration has to be the same in the blood. So this means, like, if you're not eating anything and you're just drinking pure water all the time, first of all, the body cannot keep that water.
Right.
Because that's just going to dilute you, and that's very dangerous. So it's going to get rid of the water. And at the same time, you also have a little less salt. And so your blood volume goes down and you're basically just dehydrated. So I think if you actually want to be hydrated, you need to drink something that has some electrolytes in it. But of course, if you're eating something, you're getting electrolytes through that too. So,
right. Which I think is a really good point that I think somehow gets missed. It's like when we're telling people we haven't really fully gotten there yet, but the recommendation is actually to put salt in your water or to have something that has sodium in it if you're exercising. And depending on what you eat as well. So if your diet is very low in sodium, then this is really going to benefit you. But if after you work out, you go and you have a meal that has like a ton of sodium in it, then you might not necessarily need to add salt to your water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the point is that, sounds counterintuitive, but I realize if you just drink a lot of pure water, you're going to become dehydrated.
Right.
Because, your body can't keep that water.
Right.
And, like a little tidbit fun thing here is like, for example, when people run a lot of, the people that are medics at like marathons, a lot of times when people come into the med tents, they look for hyponatremia, which is extremely low salt concentration in the blood. That is what they look for because that can go bad very quick. And there's been cases when people die actually during marathons because they become very low in it.
Wow.
There's also another case where there was a sort of a game show on the radio where they tried to win a Wii, like a game.
Yes.
And the game was who could drink the most water. And the woman who won actually died that night.
It's crazy.
Because of hyponatremia, because she basically forced her body to lower the salt concentration in her blood by drinking so much pure water. So it's a balance.
I was literally just going to say it's a balancing act. And once again, it comes back to, I think people are at this point are so frustrated with hearing me say this, but all from the mindset. The mindset can't be all or nothing. To your nutrition plan can't be all or nothing. To your physical activity plan can't be more all than nothing. To even your your hydration, it can't be like all pure water and nothing, or like, oh, you put salt in everything. Like you have to find the balance. Like, and that's where I think the reason why I was most excited to have you on here was because you have an extensive knowledge in the science, and sometimes science can't always be translated in the way in which I think most people need to hear it. And you actually have a really great way of doing that. Like you have a really great way of taking a non-biased view of research and breaking it down and explaining it to people in a digestible way.
For me, actually, that's actually something I'm very passionate about because I just want a lot of times when I talk, I want people to understand how science works because it's kind of complicated and it's easy to over interpret what scientists are doing. And for me, it's really that, we're in our labs, we're doing things, but unless we can convey to people why we're doing things and how that works, I think, it makes us a little bit irrelevant as scientists because we're kind of doing our things. We're passionate about doing this for society, but, unless we can inform people of what it is that we're doing,
right.
I'm not really sure why we're doing it.
Yeah. So true.
A lot of us scientists has to get a lot better at doing that. Especially in this day of age.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just curious. I feel like we kind of skipped over it. Like, what made you get into, what made you decide to go to get your PhD in physiology and then change to being a geneticist? What was your...
Oh, yeah. It's, as a scientist, it's easy. I think it's true for a lot of other things in life too. Like it's easy to become like sort of stationary and comfortable in what you do. Mm-hmm. And I'm a scientist. I mean, my sort of PhD in physiology is more related to sort of the diabetes research. It's really about how different tissues can take up sugar from the blood, how that happens. And then so it's kind of, I'm in the same area, but my sort of job became very, very different. But with that comes a rapid sort of learning curve. Yeah. So for me to become wider and better as a scientist, it is good to like go into a different area. Mm-hmm. So I just found this sort of scientific conundrum. Mm-hmm. And when I saw it, I immediately realized like I really want to try to answer this. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like by chance, but yeah.
But no, it's interesting. Well, because I mean, the research with diabetes is mind blowing, and I know you're really more up to date about it. So I would love to have a conversation about definitely diabetes, but more for my listeners, I'm thinking like we hear if you eat sugar, your insulin goes up and then your body stores fat. Can you explain I don't want to say my view, but like, can you explain kind of what people think about that or like why they think that if in fact it's true? Like what does the research show you when it comes to like sugar? Like you said, salt has this terrible reputation. Sugar has a terrible reputation. Yeah. And the reason we're speaking is a lot of people will say, you eat sugar, your insulin goes up, your body stores fat. And so regardless of diabetes, it will make people gain weight. That's the belief. So what are your thoughts about that within the insulin cycle?
I think, I guess for now, like, I mean, I guess we're all pretty aware that just a lot of only sugar is not going to be good for you. Right. But I think once again, it's easy to like, make something a criminal very, very fast, just tell it this is super bad. And, I don't think that's quite true. So the thesis that, you eat sugar and insulin is going to store that, you're going to promote insulin release and that's going to store your sugar as fat is partially true. Mm-hmm. But it's actually sort of an argument between different scientists in the field right now. Because I think it's kind of clear by the science that that's not all. Right. That could be part of the truth, but it's definitely not all. Right. And so what really informs me from my era, because I work now as a molecular geneticist, is that different people respond differently. Because we have these tiny genetic variations that makes us respond a little bit different. So it depends. And I mean, I talked to you earlier about there's studies now showing that, diabetics, you can give them the same food and their sugar levels in the blood is going to be wildly different. Like it's a little bit hard to explain, but some diabetics can eat ice cream and their blood sugar does not respond. And for some other diabetics, it's really bad. So I think we're still trying to understand how that works. Right. I was going to say, as a coach too, I always talk about the fact that, if you train, if you're training or being active and eat something that has sugar, you normally don't spike insulin because there's a separate system for taking up sugar that is not reliant on insulin. Mm-hmm. And that is active whenever you work a muscle. Right, right. That's kind of something to remember, around workouts.
Sugar, which we know this, but it's also interesting to hear you say it in that way, because it's like we hear that, but sometimes knowing the deeper levels, that it's because you have two different systems working. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah. So it's very different, like eating sugar when you're sitting completely still versus when you're kind of working hard.
Right. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a really good point. You also mentioned that two diabetics can have the same diet. One affects their blood sugar and one not. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if in your work you've also found the same with just people. You can be the same, maybe height, weight, gender, activity level, same diet, yet someone, I think of like childhood obesity, or just like, are there some people that just their genes are more predisposed to being like gaining weight faster, or their metabolisms? Like, how do genes play into metabolism? Yeah,
so this is super interesting. I mean, obviously, like when you talk about when you talk about activity level and diet, that can be pretty subjective. So you have to be careful there because, we say that we're at the same diet and we have the same activity level, but, as someone that sees a lot of scientific data based off of self-reporting, that's,
that's a really good point. I was going to actually ask, when it comes to like, are there actual studies in a controlled setting where that's true? Is there enough to kind of show what we know?
Yeah, that is, because we can use we put people in metabolic rooms, basically. They're locked into a room for a month, and they're, all the parameters are set exactly,
Wow.
So yes, there are differences. And, my research relates to this, because I work in how these genetic variations can make some people hungrier than others. They will eat more and become more overweight. And we can show it's significant. And there's a subgroup of these people that really has something that makes them more prone to become obese. And this would start very early, like at 2 years old, 1, 2 years old, you can see that difference. And I think once you're set on that trajectory, it's very hard to turn that around. And so, and we know that these people are probably more sensitive to certain types of foods. So it makes sense for us to be able to predict who they are and, help them. And when we talk about genetics versus environment, we say that we can predict that, in this case of metabolism and obesity, we think like 60 to 70% of that is based in the genes. And we know this, for example, you can have like identical twin studies, like twins separated at birth.
Yeah.
Most of the times, growing up in completely different environments ends up at the same body weight, whether they're obese or they're thin.
Wow.
Yeah. However, I do want to make a point, and that is it's an interplay.
Right.
It's never one without the other. And so a good way to think about it is that genes kind of load the gun, but the environment is what pulls the trigger.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
We need
so genes are not destiny. They could predispose you to something, but the environment you are in is going to be very important for if that's going to become true or not.
That was so powerful.
Yeah.
Just repeat that one more time. So, gene, I love what I think we've spoken.
I don't think I coined that expression though. It's a lot easier to say, but I stand by it. Yeah. So what we say is that genes load the gun, but environment pull the trigger. Right? It could be there. It could be a possibility, but because you put yourself in a certain environment, that's going to trigger this. This mechanism where, you're going to have an outcome.
Right.
And so I think it's important because people think like, oh, what if I just have these genes and it's impossible to be like, that's not the way it is.
Right.
And, yeah, that's.
Well, really, really great point. So you can have certain genes, but depending on your environment, you might be more prone for them to be exposed or to develop into being someone who's obese, depending on what you choose to engage in. Now, what about the flip side? What about somebody who, they do, like from a very young age, they are hungrier usually. They grow up overweight. As they get older, it just gets worse. And their lifestyle factors also is because of their lifestyle. They're maybe not as active and all that. But now they decide, I want to lose weight. And they start. Now, can you change? I'm curious because I noticed personally, like when I started losing weight, like I actually wasn't hungry as often. Like, whereas when I was feeling like when I was eating, when I was overweight, I felt like food was always on my mind. And I'm wondering, and I've read a little bit about it, but I'm curious on your end, like what you found, like, is there a genetic component to that where you can almost reverse it? So it's like, maybe you do have these genes that you're predisposed you to being obese. You live most of your life obese, but now you're 35 years old and you want to make a change. And now you start eating healthier, exercising, and all those things. Can you physically almost like change gene expression?
You can. Cool. And because we've I'm going to take a brief example of this. And this is because in genetics, we used to think that, you have a set of genes, and what you do yourself does not really affect the next generation. There's no, you're going to just give the same genetic code to the next generation. But now we talk about something called epigenetics. And that is what you mentioned. That is that, yes, you have the genetic code, but that genetic code can be influenced. It can be slightly changed depending on how you treat yourself. And the reason we found that was actually from, my home country, Sweden. There's some very isolated villages up in the north that keep very specific ledgers in the church about what years there were famine and what years they had a lot of food. And what they found, they saw a correlation between metabolic diseases and what happened with the food availability. Because there was not, it's like what we call a closed gene pool, there's not a lot of people coming in and out. So
right.
Kind of a lot of little experiment happening in this village.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the first evidence that we realized actually how you treat yourself can affect your outcome, the way your genes are expressed, and also the next generations.
Powerful.
That's
powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good. That's good. No, I really love it. While we're on this topic, I recently did a podcast episode and recording about the DNA testing. So DNA testing is very popular today. And like I said, I do my research, but I want to know from you, like, how reliable is that? And should people really be kind of taking that to heart? Like, what are your views on DNA testing?
I have a few thoughts on it. Obviously, this is where the future is going. I said it's super cool. I agree with you. Like, it will be really cool when it's actually naturally used. And it's where science, I think a lot of the genetics research now that's one way it's going to. And we have learned a lot. And, it's super popular today to do these tests where you look like, how much part of what nationality, what part of the world are you from? And there are obviously science behind this, and there are, and they could be true to some part. However, I would, in my own mind state that these companies are overplaying how significant these results are. When it comes to predicting what country you're possibly from and so on, I'm not so worried about it, But, their end game is not to stop there. They're going to continue, and they're already doing that. And they start predicting, what metabolic type you are, what you should eat, what diseases you might get. I become very uneasy, and I'm very skeptical because the leading scientists in the world is struggling with doing this reliably. And I really don't think they can either. And, so this is what we call polygenic risk score. That is, we have some rare genetic disease like BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations is very likely to give you breast cancer.
Yeah.
That's one mutation. That's very, very rare. That's kind of a very strong genetic. But in this case, we're taking maybe 100 or 1,000 mutations. And we say, like, if you carry this specific set, all together, they gave you a risk of getting a certain disease. Unfortunately, it doesn't really tell us how to treat anyone. It just says that you're likely to get a certain disease. And I'm very uneasy about, saying to people with a low reliability, you're likely to get this disease. Because I don't find that very ethically right. And also, it doesn't really inform us of how we're going to treat that.
Totally. Yeah.
So in this case, I'm worried about them overstating how good this is. Actually, I'm going to say one more thing that I worry about, and that is it's a little bit unclear how these databases, who's going to be responsible for these databases in the future? Because you're giving away your DNA. And I need people to understand that that's something very personal.
Wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And so it might be a little futuristic, but like I haven't done it because I actually don't feel comfortable about, having my entire DNA sequenced by a company when I don't know who's really responsible for that. And you're already seeing this playing out with, when they found the Golden State Killer and they found multiple criminals basically because they gain access to these records. That's great.
Right.
However, you know, it's a little bit unclear what the laws are on, you know, what's the limit, you know?
Yeah.
When can they go in there and start looking for people? You know, what's going to justify that?
Wow. I never even thought about that. Yeah. I mean, so obviously in certain situations it could be used as good, but who knows what this world can do.
Yes. Because it's, you know, in the future, I'm not sure who is going to manage these massive databases that's going to have millions of people's DNA in it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think people should just like reflect over this a little bit because your genetic code is something extremely personal.
Totally.
You're sort of giving away.
Totally. No, completely true. And yeah, I mean, so much to that, to their point. And then, really, it's not really teaching you anything. It's not helping you with anything.
So, and what I mean, but I work on, and I'm totally not there, but I mean, you could imagine in the future that you could take a genetic test that could tell you something about what your diet should be. Mm-hmm. What diet would you do best on? We're not there yet. We're far away from it.
We're far from it. And the other point too is like, there's a lot of things that we already do know, but yet people aren't doing them. So like, it's kind of really like, think about, we know genetics, we know like if your parents have high cholesterol, you're likely to get high cholesterol. Like, do you really need to go to do a DNA test to be told that? Yeah,
exactly. That's good. Cause like I remember this morning, I woke up and I had like a glass of water with some lemon juice and a pinch of salt. And I'm like, whoa, that's like the first time ever.
You hydrated.
I was like proud of myself. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but no, but that's so cool. So yeah, so we're doing part of that quest. The quest is accountability and support. And then that helps drive behavior. So if you're someone who normally doesn't hydrate well, and you're being educated how to properly hydrate, and you're in an environment that encourages that behavior, that's what's going to work. But being tested, you've known for years that you don't hydrate well.
Yeah, I know.
And yet it hasn't changed your behavior. Hello, I'm interrupting this podcast with a special offer for you. So excited because there is a new platform out there for you, for anybody that is looking to lose weight and wants to work out but doesn't know what workouts to follow. Maybe you're afraid of going to the gym, you have a little gym intimidation, you don't know what to do with the weight racks, and you don't know what to do with the equipment. Well, don't worry, I have a solution for you. I have partnered up with WLWorkouts.com. So you go to WLWorkouts.com, discount code TONY10 to get 10% off a 4-week or 12-week workout plan. And it comes with a whole guide as well as YouTube videos to show you how to use the equipment. It's mostly strength training. So if you're new to weights, particularly for the ladies, I would strongly encourage it. It's a great jumpstart for the year. Pretty positive. They're on sale now for about $20 or less for the 4-week, and the 12-week, I believe, is like $24. I know that that's not the usual price, but there's a special for January. So I will just say that the special, it does expire. This using the discount code. This is only a promo for January. So I just pulled up the site right now, actually. I should have probably did that before. So usually the price of the 4-week or 12-week workout plan is around $65, but it's a special right now for the month of January. It's only $19.61, so it's about $20 in US, and you get 10% off when you use discount code TONY10. So it's definitely worth it, especially if you're new to working out. But even if you're not, I totally am going to take this to the gym with me to supplement the other workouts that I do. But if you want, obviously, you're going to get the most out of it by following it from the beginning till the end, and also obviously making sure you're paying attention to your nutrition. So if you need help with that, let me know. All right, guys. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. Just we're gonna, I don't want to wrap up quite yet, but we're getting closer to the end. So I'm curious, is there any like more based off of like the latest research or anything you've been currently working on that you have found like really fascinating, or something that maybe our listeners would find intriguing or interested to learn about?
Oh, there's so much. I mean, for me personally, what I work on is really just, it's kind of recent understanding that how these small, it's an interesting thing actually with the small genetic variations that I work on. I say that we can always see that children are obese, but the system that controls like your energy balance, if you imagine you eat 2,000 calories a day. Now, if that system is off like by 20 calories a day, I mean, what is 20 calories?
Right.
It's nothing.
Right.
Let's say it's off by 20 calories a day. Like, over 10 years, that is like, it's probably like 8 to 10 pounds of fat.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting that the small variation over time can add up to be extremely significant if it starts at birth.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. I just find it amazing that, most of us actually are staying so stable if you think about it anyways,
Well, because our bodies are really amazing. Our bodies are incredible. Like they are designed to keep us balanced. So imagine when you actually put effort forward to do that, how I don't think people recognize how much we can take advantage of our body's capabilities so easily every single day. And but at some point, like your body's going to give out, like unless you treat it well. It's just not going to be sustainable in anything that you do.
Now, and the second thing that's, as a geneticist, that's amazing. Like we had a revolution the last few years, and many people heard about it. It's a system called CRISPR. Essentially, it's just a bacterial system that we redesigned that we can use in mammalian cells, humans too. And it allows us to manipulate genetic code very exact and very quick. And it just basically changed the whole game. And we're already treating some rare genetic disease. Like I believe, there's multiple genetic disease, rare ones where they have a mutation that we can change back now.
Wow.
Muscular dystrophy is one, for example, that I think is, they're really already in clinical trials. So I am very excited about the future in genetics and what's going to happen,
Yeah.
It's interesting. Comes with a lot of moral and ethical dilemmas too,
I'm sure.
What we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. But it's for sure a fun field to work in right now. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I know we're going to have you back on with more updates regularly. I can't wait. I really think we need to have a DM Life podcast. I think that would be so.
I think so too. Yeah. There's a lot.
So great. Yeah. So, so guys, so if you want to work with Olof and myself together with also like a mindset specialist, which would be Tim, and then Yusan, who is a movement specialist, and you want to learn more about like it's beyond hydration, right? It's being able to learn how to put salt in your water and make sure that you're absorbing the right amount and keeping balanced. It's like, we're going to talk about like macronutrients, but it's going to be a little bit more than probably what you're used to getting with, if you're kind of past like those basics of nutrition. It's a really, really awesome program. So I'm going to put the link in the bio for that. But you could also work with Olof on your own. I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast, a lot of even my own clients, and just people I know that are in my support group are training for half marathons or their very first marathon or something like that. Can you speak a little bit more about what you do, who you coach, and how you coach them through those sorts of processes?
Yeah, I've been a coach for quite a few years now. And my main reason for coaching is just, but I really like it actually.
Yeah,
I do. I know it's just, I do take a lot of the lessons that I've learned from my own racing and going long distances, and it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding for me to be able to show people how to kind of go past those limits they set up for themselves. So I coach mainly, a lot of my coach goes through a tri club in the city, Empire Tri Club. So if people want to connect me, there's a website, Empire Tri Club. If you just Google that, you'll find that. So you can find me on that website. Also, like through Instagram is an easy way to connect with me. I'm Olof the Viking. There's only one.
I'll put that. I always put the Instagram link in the show notes. It's easiest for me.
Yeah, it's spelled Olof, but Olof the Viking. You're able to. Yeah, and if people like DM me there for sure if they want to connect and just talk about what we could also just talk about what the goals are and if that fits. I coach triathlons, but also a lot of just running, marathons, half marathons, cycling. Yeah.
Will you write them a program, like what to do on the different days?
Yeah. No. If through my coaching, of course, like I'm sort of a scientist, so I am a little bit data driven. So it's really about, like many other things, you need to setting the goal up, informs you of where you need to go. Where are you now? And where do you need to be on that day?
Totally.
And when you kind of like understand those two things, then you can write a training plan that spans from where you are now to where you want to be at a certain time. And that's very important to do that, because it's important not to just do too much too soon. In this running, especially, there's so many people who get injuries all the time.
Yeah.
And 95% of the time I look at what it is, it's just training too much too soon.
Yeah.
You can get there, but it has to be in a very controlled manner.
Totally.
Your body has to have time to adapt to that training stress. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a process.
No, for sure. But yeah, I love the parallels between the training and nutrition and everything.
Yeah.
I told my slogan, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. And you like start, you're like, look at the big result, but like slowly break it down. It's like, that's what we need to do. Everybody wants to go from like 0 to 100 and like magically like crush these goals, and like they're great intentions, but anything worth it in life takes time.
Yeah. And like, I think you're absolutely right. And like, it's easy to, when you see all that you need to do, either you go do too much too soon, or you get intimidated by having to do all that and you don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Because people go like, how is it possible that you train to do these long things? And I'm like, the biggest step you're ever going to take is from doing nothing to that first workout, or to that first small step. That is the biggest step. Once you get started, the rest, are all increments. They're small steps, but that first step is, sometimes the hardest.
Totally. Yeah. Usually the hardest. I always tell people it's the hardest. Yeah,
me too. Like
it's so hard. Okay. Awesome. Olof, this has been so great. Is there anything else you want to share, talk about while we wrap up? Any other last minute?
I just want to say this is so much fun. Thanks for having me on. I think my last thing is just that, the biggest step sometimes is going from that couch to the first workout. If we talk about training, this is Coach Olof talking now, but it's good to hold yourself accountable, by seeing what you've done and what you did not do, but don't shame yourself. Because I don't find that shaming really works ever.
No, never.
You can hold yourself accountable, but don't shame yourself for not doing it. Say like, it didn't work out today, but tomorrow's a new day. We'll get back on it.
Yeah. Totally. Yes. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'll make sure I put all of your information in the show notes so people can connect with you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Anyone listening, if you've not already subscribed to the Tips with Tony podcast, please subscribe. New episode comes out every Monday and every Wednesday. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.